Star Wars podcast, coming to you talking about your favorite characters and stories and deep diving into all of them. Today, our topic, or the question we're covering, as it says in the title, is how, or has Palpatine's return aged better over time? Um, Obviously, it was rough walking out of that movie theater. Um, but first, we need to talk about some Star Wars news that came out this week.
All right, so the big thing that came out this week was that Lego Star Wars has three new shorts that are available. You can watch them either on starwars.com or you can look them up on YouTube. Two of them are nonverbal, as traditional Lego Star Wars is, and the last one is an actual verbal one where the little Lego guys are talking. The first one is Chewie's Holiday Cheer Up, where Chewie is missing his family and Han helps him through it.
Yeah, that one was very sweet. The next one is Tenu Treasures. It's Kai and Liss, I think it's pronounced, from Young Jedi Adventures. Um, it's like just a like preschool Disney Plus show, and in that they go with Yoda to collect plans to make a wreath. And on the StarWars.com news article, it has quotes from the creator on each one of these shorts, and this one said that he wanted to showcase the excitement and the curiosity of a child, and especially at Christmas time. So they were going to different parts of this planet and collecting plants for the wreath, and it just showed uh, the two characters not thinking their process through and falling, and Yoda saving them, just showing the naiveness of a child. And then the last one is "Twas the Night Before Life Day," which is obviously a play on "Twas the Night Before Christmas," and it was Yoda narrating this one. This was the verbal one, and it was an Empire Christmas party. They were playing White Elephant, but they called it White Bantha Swap, which I really like. Um, and the Emperor loves it. He thinks it's an evil game because you get something you want and then someone steals it. So that really just shows that White Elephant is really just a game of the dark side. So consider that when you're playing it this Christmas. Um, Anyways, so it goes into a bunch of infighting within the Empire and even between the Emperor and Vader, and then eventually R2 comes in to try to stop it, and everyone stops fighting and tries to get R2, and R2 ends up sabotaging some gifts to anger the Empire.
Yeah, and then the next big thing that happened for Star Wars news was Young Jedi Adventures, a show on Disney Plus aimed at preschoolers. Kai and Liz are part of that show. Won the Outstanding Sound Mixing and Sound Editing for a preschool animated program Children's Emmy. It's a
That's cool.
mouthful. I had to read that to make sure I didn't get it wrong, but
Yeah,
that's a big deal. Like Star Wars winning anything like Actors Guild related is a big deal. So
yeah,
that's good for Young Jedi Adventures.
definitely. And then the final piece of news this week is that they're releasing a Mace Windu book, which is awesome because everyone's always wanting new Mace Windu content. And it's following Mace Windu fulfilling Qui Gon's final wish to save the people on the outer rim planet of Medagos. Um, and in the article, it talks a little bit about um, Mace Windu, Mace Windu and Qui Gon's relationship. It wasn't the best, but through that, or ignoring that, he still went and fulfilled his final request. Um, Metagos, it said in the article, is like this big desert planet, and they're all underground from natural disasters and stuff. So, uh, and the quote
What
it
does
gave a
that sound
synopsis.
like?
Oh man! And then in the article, or at the end, it gives a synopsis of the book, and the quote is, or the quote I like from it is, Mace finds himself pushed to the boundaries of the Jedi Code, challenging his beliefs and his relationship to the Force itself, which is a powerful statement to put in there. I'm very intrigued in this book, and it comes out summer 24.
Well, I'll be
Um,
looking forward to that one.
yeah, I'm very excited. That's all the Star Wars news for this week. A little bit lighter, but it's still some interesting stuff. But actually, there's a new Star Wars S movie coming out. Not Star Wars, but
Yeah.
it has similar vibes to Star Wars. It's called Rubber Moon. Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
It looks really good. I've watched every trailer that's out for it. I'm really excited for it. It's the closest thing to Star Wars ever going to get for a while, so I'll take what I can get. But
Yeah,
it's called Rebel Moon Part One: A Child of Fire, and it comes out December 21st, so this Thursday. And it's Zack Snyder's take on Star Wars, and it's got no relation to Star Wars, so it's not going to be like they're not going to ever be referencing the Falcon or the Jedi or anything like that. It's just a space adventure, and I'm looking forward to it. The the reviews from the critics have been really bad. I think Jonathan, you have the stats on that.
yeah. 23% from Rotten Tomatoes and 32% from Metacritic, and then 6.9 from IMDb.
Which, for those of you that don't know, that is terrible scores for critic reviews. But the thing that has me excited is the audience reviews are also posted now. And the audience reviews, when I looked at it earlier this morning, it was 85%. So clearly
Oh
everybody
wow.
loves this movie. Something about it doesn't hit well with the reporters or the people that got to see it before. But I have high hopes for it. But even if
Comes
it's
out.
not good, it's not Star Wars. So don't worry about
It,
it.
yeah, it is. It comes out tomorrow, so I'm excited for that one.
And
And
I don't
then
know if I said it. It's on Netflix.
yes, and then I think I saw like part two comes out. I don't know. It's somewhere. I can't remember if it was 24 or 20. I wouldn't be. It wouldn't be 24 probably, but it was somewhere. I think of 25 because it's also listed on Netflix. Um, you have that one
24.
pulled up?
It says Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scar Giver,
Okay, cool.
2024. It doesn't have a date yet, but it is 24.
All right. I guess we're
Oh,
just
sorry.
splitting movies. I made
April
when I saw part
19th.
one. I'm like, oh man, it's gonna be a Dune thing.
Now, we can get into that another time. But the
Okay.
potential release date is April 19th right now.
Okay. Cool. That's actually pretty fast. They
Yeah.
must have they must have done it all at once. I would have filmed it all at once then. That's all we want to cover before we go into Palpatine. Um, and we, we're talking about Palpatine's return. And when you went to the movie theater, or when you watched at the movie theater, it wasn't good. And I actually had that clip to play of Poe talking about Palpatine.
We've decoded the intel from the First Order spy, and it confirms the worst. Somehow Palpatine returned.
Wait, do we believe this?
It cannot be. The Emperor is dead.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
Yeah, that's it. The only kind of thing we had to Palpatine's real story there was the guy at the end saying cloning, a technique only the Sith knew. Uh, that's it. But before we get into actually how Palpatine returned, um, we're gonna go over the history of Palpatine. If you want to start us into that one.
Yeah, for sure. So, the earliest thing that we have about Palpatine starts in the year 52 BBY. And BBY stands for Before the Battle of Yavin, which is what everybody knows as the destruction of the Death Star. Um, that's the main guiding principle in Star Wars timeline. So everything before that is BBY, everything is after that is ABY. So in 52 BY, that's when Palpatine was elected the Senator of Naboo. He was elected the Senator of Naboo with the influence and power that Darth Plagueis had. It doesn't say who Darth Plagueis was, it just says with his power and influence, he was able to get him to become the senator. So you jump forward to 41 BBY, Anakin Skywalker is born. Obviously, it's not Palpatine, but still, most people believe that, the Immaculate Conception of Anakin was at the hand of Palpatine. Um, so the next big thing is in 40 BBY. So baby Anakin's 1 at this point. Maul becomes Sidious's apprentice, and this is an approximation. Um, the guys that wrote the book Star Wars Timelines couldn't nail down specifically what year it happened, but they collectively agreed on this is the year that it happened. So if you go and look at the rule of two, it was in the year 40 BBY or just before it is when Palpatine would have killed Darth Plagueis and fulfilled the whole story, right? So then now the rule of two fulfills as the master is Palpatine and the apprentice is Maul. And not a whole lot happens between now, like between 40 and 32 BBY. It's pretty much just Sidious teaching Maul the Force. 32 BBY is when the Trade Federation invades Naboo, so that's like the big events of the first movie. Maul also dies again. It's a Sith thing to like not actually die. Maul dies in 32 BBY, and Dooku in that same year becomes Sidious's apprentice, and that is also the year that he is elected the Supreme Chancellor. And you kind of see how the way that he was elected Supreme Chancellor, you know, he called for the vote of no confidence. He convinced Padme when she was still the Queen of Naboo at that time.
Yeah.
Or no, she was.
I
think she was the Queen of Naboo. Yeah, she was the Queen of Naboo at that time. She called for a vote of no confidence and then got him elected as Supreme Chancellor. We can only assume that that's very similar to how Palpatine became the Senator of Naboo, because he's not an original thinker. Like he was just like, oh, well, this is what the boss did, so that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
In that same year, after he is elected Chancellor, the Sith, so at this point it would be Palpatine and Dooku, take over Sifo Dyas's project to create the clone army. So Sifo Dyas actually did go to Kamino and create the clones on behalf of the Republic and the Jedi. But not many people knew that that was happening, and he actually paid for it himself, which is a big deal because Jedi don't really have any money. But the 32 BBY is also the year that Master Sifo Dyas died, and the Sith just took that right over. And that's when they approached the Kaminoans to implant the inhibitor chips, which we'll talk about later. And then, you know, Palpatine just does his big bad dog thing for a few years. And in 22 BBY, he's granted the emergency powers to the Senate, which is the events that directly lead up to the Clone Wars. And in 22 BBY, the Clone Wars begin. I'm sure you've seen the meme where it's, you know, the Pixar guy who's playing chess and he walks to the other side of the table and he plays chess and he walks to the other side. That's Palpatine in the Clone Wars, right? So he's like, okay, it's time to play chess. So 2 years into the Clone Wars, Palpatine tells Gallius Rax, who is an Imperial lieutenant at this time. He's known Rax since he was a child. He tells Rax about his contingency plans. And this is where, like, the big thing, like, this is what we really wanted to talk about, was his contingency plans. So the first thing in his contingency plan is Operation Cinder. So what Operation Cinder was is Palpatine was absolutely obsessed with the fact the Empire could not exist without him. And he knew, you know, at some point he has a mortal body. He doesn't live for 900 whatever years like Yoda does. He's a human. He knows that he's gonna die, and he's got to find a way to preserve his life, or his life force rather, past his reign. So what he does is he sets up Operation Cinder, which is an orbital bombardment campaign that was meant to begin upon his death. So when the Emperor died, and I have the date that he died in 4 ABY after the Battle of Yavin. So when he died, Sentinel droids got sent out to a select few Imperial commanders and officers. Most of the admirals. This is really portrayed in the Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign. So if you ever get a chance, go play it. It's wonderful. They do a really good job walking you through it. But the whole point of it was that when the Emperor died, the Empire has to make sure that it asserts its dominance over the rest of the galaxy. Because he assumed that if he died, it's because the Empire fell. And the Empire didn't fall at his death, but he didn't know that, right? So the whole point of it was to exert control, exert the fear, do the Empire stuff long enough for him to come back as whatever his future self was going to be. And he wasn't going to be coming back as a child. He was going to be coming back as some kind of an adult force where people would recognize him. They would know, okay, yeah, that's Palpatine. He's back, right? Like, oh, it was just an assassination attempt. Sorry, but that never happened. But Jonathan, you have how he preserved himself. So
Yes.
if you could talk about that.
Wait, just for a second. Before I get into that, can we talk about how such a big plot point of Palpatine's history is in a video game?
It took so long, right? Like I want to say Battlefront 2 came out 5 years ago.
It's it's definitely longer than that.
Okay, well, I'll check it when you're talking.
Okay.
But
anyways, yeah, that was
we sat with that plot hole for so long.
Yeah, that's probably in like comics and stuff, but that's the main source we have of Operation Cinder.
It is. So it was actually first mentioned in a comic in 2015.
Oh, okay.
But again, the game didn't come out for another 3 or 4 years, and nobody caught it in the comics because it was actually, I forgot, in the comic they find out that the rebels actually found out about Operation Cinder. They found out that it was some sort of an environmental weapon that would boil seas and kill all the life on a planet. They didn't realize that it was going to completely destroy the planets.
First of all, the Rise of Skywalker movie came out December 20th, 2019. And then on August 3rd, 2021, StarWars.com releases an article explaining how Palpatine returned. Keep in mind, this is 3 years after the movie came out, or just under 3 years after the movie came out, which is insane that they took that long to, fix their story. But what happened is he used a process called strand casting. And strand casting is a process of creating genetically modified clones. So unlike the Clone Wars, it's not identical genes wise. And in the article, it uses it's like I think it uses like same but different or something like that, where it's you have the base template clone that you use, and then you add genes of other specimens to get the result that you want.
It'd be gene splicing.
Yeah. The problem with this is it's a very hard and unstable process. In the Wikipedia article about strand casting, it mentions that they were in this constant state of pain. And when Vader found out about Vader did not like that. He found out about his strand casting plans on Exegol, and he was not a fan of that at all. He confronts Vader, or he confronts Palpatine, sorry, and Palpatine, once Vader learned about it, Palpatine actually holds it over his head. They have a very toxic relationship. And Palpatine basically just said, hey, you know about these strand casts? You can be replaced by any one of them. Which, what a relationship to have. But more about how it worked is a main topic that it went into is that Palpatine's one of Palpatine's main problems was that just because you use a force sensitive base, it does not mean that you get a force sensitive result. That was the biggest flaw with this type of genetic cloning, was that he couldn't guarantee that he would get a force sensitive result, and obviously he wants to have that power and he wants to use that to control the galaxy. And then it also talked about in the Star Wars article that that they could hold consciousness of Palpatine, but they could also have free will. And that actually gets into a lot of the sequel trilogy, because Rey's father was a Strandcast. It was revealed in the Star Wars article that Rey's father was a Strandcast, and it was one of the first clones to survive the cloning process. But he wasn't force sensitive. He was human. It had zero connection to the force. So Palpatine was disappointed. But Palpatine let him live because it was his bloodline, and he saw it as a son, but a son in a way that he could use to his advantage.
And correct me if I'm wrong. He wasn't force sensitive, so Palpatine never entered his, forced his consciousness on his son, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
But he kept him because his hope was that he would have a force-sensitive child because he was still a Palpatine. Which happened with Rey, obviously. And that's why Palpatine was so obsessed with Rey. Palpatine was trying to create a Strandcast to continue the Sith, and then he cloned Rey's father, which had a force-sensitive child, which he tried to get to be the heir of the Sith. So that's why, especially in the last movie, he's really focusing on Rey, is because I didn't know this, and they don't explain this in the movie, but his father was a Strandcast, or her father was a Strandcast, and he was planning this for a very long time, and his whole plan with Rey's father was to get Rey to be the heir, ever since Rey's father survived the cloning process. I have a couple more examples of Strandcasting, just so we can connect it all together. The big one is Snoke. Snoke was an attempted Strandcast.
Yep.
His purpose was to lead the First Order and train Kylo Ren, which he did do. He was controlled by Palpatine, but this is where the consciousness but free will comes in, because he was influenced by Palpatine, but he still had his free will. And then it actually says in the Wikipedia, the quote is, when Snoke died by his apprentice's hand, he fulfilled his purpose as designed by the cultists who engineered him, which is all of the blind hooded figures you see on Exegol in the movie. Those are the cultists that are helping with Strandcasting. So I didn't know that before I researched this more. It was that Snoke's purpose was to die. It was to raise Kylo Ren up to take the throne, or to lead the First Order until he could get Rey too. And he actually, fun fact about Snoke is that once he realized that Snoke was a success, he made like 6 different versions of Snoke, so that if Snoke died, he could replace him. But he died and fulfill his purpose, so he didn't have to use that. And then one very interesting one was that Din Djarin thought that Grogu was a Strandcast.
Really? He thought he was a Strandcast?
He thought he was a Strandcast.
A Strandcast of Yoda, or what?
Just that species, yeah, kind of. It didn't give that much information, but there was like one paragraph that Din Djarin thought Grogu was a Strandcast, just because of some weird problems with Grogu.
Interesting.
Yeah.
He just didn't realize that he didn't know that he was at the Jedi Temple when Order 66 happened.
Yeah. I don't know where they found that out from, but that was the most interesting thing I learned.
Interesting.
Yeah, so in summary, we'll go with an in summary here. Strandcasting is creating genetically modified clones, where you pick genes from different specimens to get your desired result.
Yeah. And it's not like the mass production of clones like it was on Camino. It's a clone production made for a very specific purpose, and it's an extremely, I don't want to say limited run, but you only make as many as you need to, and that's it. Because you make it to preserve your consciousness, and there's only one of you. You can only occupy one consciousness at a time.
Yeah, it's not it talks about, if you want to go read about it, it talks about so many failed attempts by Palpatine. Like, it took him so long to get Rey's father, or Snoke. That's why he kind of made so many versions of Snoke when he figured that part out. But then even after Snoke, like, he couldn't. It still was unstable creating further strand casts, even having a successful person like Snoke. And you can kind of see that when in the last movie, when they go to Exegol with Palpatine hooked up to life support and everything, that like he still hadn't really figured it out after 20 BBY to the end. I don't know when their last
it's almost
movie...
50 years. Yeah. So the last movie, okay, this is at the end of my history, but the last movie when we do see Palpatine, it's in 35 ABY. So he started this, or he told Rax about it in 20 BBY. He had probably already started it, but that's the first mention that we have of it.
Yeah.
So he had been doing it for at least 55 years and still hadn't gotten it right. It's like this whole, when he has the conversation with Anakin, where it's like, you know, the dark side has ways to extend your life. This is what he was talking about. This is what Darth Plagueis had figured out. But he didn't get a chance to do it because Palpatine killed him before he tried.
Oh, man. Yeah, so
all right.
if
do you have anything more for the Strandcast?
No, I think we continue on with Operation Cinder and the contingency plan.
Okay, because that was pretty much everything for Operation Cinder. Like, the whole point of it was, you know, with the Strandcast, was to get the galaxy in a state of fear and control, so that the Emperor could come back and be the Emperor and lead the Empire again. And his whole idea was that he would just be able to jump into his Strandcast, you know, take it maybe a year or two, and then come back. But obviously that didn't happen. So we're going back to the timeline. The last thing we brought up was in 20 BBYs when he told Rax about his contingency plans. So then now we get to jump into the next movie, which is when he's kidnapped by Grievous on Coruscant. And, you know, they have the Anakin and Obi-Wan have the battle with Grievous, and they crash the ship on the what looks like a landing strip, right? So there's a lot that happens. This is all in 19 BBY. This is when Palpatine reveals to Anakin that he's Sidious. This is when the Jedi confrontation happens in Sidious's office. You know, rest in peace, Mace Windu.
Good thing we got a book.
That's when, yeah, good thing we got a book. Anakin gets taken as his apprentice in the same year. And, you know, just keep it rolling. This is when Order 66 happens. So the big thing with Order 66, jumping back real quick, when they took over the clone project, they put inhibitor chips in the clones so that when they gave these secret commands, they would perform secret actions. And Order 66 was one of them. There was something like 70 different orders that were used through these inhibitor chips so that they would be viewed as regular. Because if you only had one purpose, somebody would have found it.
Yeah.
But they used them often. It's just that only Sidious and Dooku knew what 66 was. So then you fast forward a little bit, you know, Anakin and Obi-Wan have their moment on Mustafar. Sidious comes to collect Anakin. He doesn't go to save him. He goes to pick him back up, like, all right, dude, I need you back at work on Monday. Like, let's go get you some new body parts. He turns him into Vader. And one of the things about the suit that he gets manufactured into. He's in a constant state of pain. Palpatine requested that from the cybernetics doctor that made it. So he was in a constant state of pain. So he'd constantly be angry. So he could constantly be in a state of hatred. To always have a quick connection to the dark side. Because that's one of the things that, like, Anakin could have turned back after all of those things, but he was constantly being forced back into the dark side. So you fast forward a few years, in the year 14 BBY, this is when Palpatine first meets Thrawn. And that's a big deal. You know, it's going to be a big deal, especially with the new movies coming out, everything that happened in Ahsoka. But that's pretty much it for a good 14, 15 years. You know, he's doing his thing. He's building the Death Star, right? Controlling the galaxy. There isn't just a lot of big events. There isn't a lot of big things that happen. It's the occasional, you know, oh, I need you to go murder this guy, or I need you to go collect this person, or go attack this planet. Like, the general dictatorship of the galaxy, just coasting. But then we get to the year 0 ABY. That's the Battle of Yavin, when the Death Star is destroyed. So that is when Sidious returns to Exegol. He's still alive for the first time at this point. Goes to Exegol, to the cult of the Sith Eternal, to help. You know, like, we really need to start ramping up production, right? We need to get this strand casting thing figured out. We need to start breaking ground on all these ships, and they build thousands of ships in no time. In 4 ABY, so the next year, Luke and Vader and Palpatine, you know, depending on how you want to look at it, that's when they have the whole battle. That's when Vader dies. And that's also when Palpatine dies. Or does he? Right? And then we know nothing. We have nothing for 31 years. Not our years. 31 Star Wars years. Where no one has any idea that Palpatine is alive. To be honest, at this point, the only person that would know that's in the normal universe and not on Exegol would be Snoke. He would be the only person that has any idea. And if you go into the strand casting stuff, that would be if Palpatine even allowed him to understand.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like in the years following his demise, he retreated to Exegol. So he found a way to use the dark side of the Force to kind of use it, escape with his consciousness, you know, peace out, to the bodies, the strandcast bodies that they had prepared. But at that point, they weren't ready. Like you were saying before, they didn't have a viable candidate. And that's why when we see him in 35 ABY in episode 9, that he's hooked up to this deathly mechanized life support machine.
Yeah. And
it's like he's just decaying from the outside and the inside, but also he's still alive. It's not a zombie.
Yeah.
I would go so far as to say that's as close as you could get with the Force to being a zombie. But the amount of control and power that he had because he was on Exegol, which is the Sith's, you know, home world.
Yeah.
Because he had all of those followers there, they built that massive, massive temple. Like before Palpatine did all this, the room that they were in, I call it the Colosseum, that didn't exist. He had that built. Wow. Obviously, he wasn't planning on dying there at the hands of the person, you know, the two people that he was raising up to, you know, like take his place and everything.
Well, was he? Wasn't he planning on Rey killing him?
So, yeah, he was planning on Rey killing him, but it wasn't going to be there, right? Because he knew once he decided that Rey was allowed free will, that she was going to be the heir to the Empire. And part of his ascension and the Sith's ascension is that traditionally, with the rule of 2, the apprentice kills the master, and the master that then becomes the master.
Yeah.
That's where Palpatine's history ends. You know, hopefully he doesn't come back as a Force ghost. because, in my opinion, he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
But that's the big stuff with Palpatine's history, and like looking at, why everyone was so upset with somehow Palpatine returned. It's because no one described to the general audience, other than the one mention in a comic book in 2015, that he had some kind of contingency plan. That's why everybody was so mad about it. You had 3 movies, right? The sequel trilogy, you had 3 movies, and you waited until the last one to say somehow Palpatine returned. You didn't bother to go into any of this. You could have had some visions. You could have had Luke finding out. You could anything.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
That was the most frustrating part. It's not that he came back, because like that's whatever. Like Star Wars needs a big grand bad guy at all times. Fine with it. It's how they did it, and that's why they sent the letter out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I going back to the question. I do think it's aged better over time. Right, that's kind of what we're getting at right now.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the problem with context in the movie. Like you said, if they would just, heck, if they even released an article before the movie came out, right? And some people would read it, not everyone, right? But I would say a fair few would read it, especially if they're trying to Google figuring out how did Palpatine return after they watched out of the movie theater.
Right.
I think it's just the fact that they clarified themselves 2 or 3 years later.
Yeah. Well, you said that the episode came out in 2019, right?
Yeah, December 2019, and then the article came out in August 21.
Okay, so the only other chance you would have any clue that Palpatine was going to return was Battlefront 2 came out in 2017. Okay. But like I've played the entirety of the campaign, it does not say anything about him returning. It's literally just, and again, it comes from like you play as like a lower lieutenant.
Yeah.
In Inferno Squad, which is essentially their elite special forces commandos. You don't get that perspective, but I feel like they could have given that, right?
Definitely.
Why does Operation Cinder exist? Other than this is my last screw you just because I died. That's kind of what it felt like when you were playing through it. It's like, well, I died, so you guys don't get to live either. The heck with all of these planets.
That's definitely, I agree, definitely. It just, they don't explain the strand casting, so it just feels like he's just destroying life for no reason. Which, he might have been. Who knows? I mean, he's Palpatine.
He kind of did anyway, right? Like, if you go back to, like, the Death Star, right? Fun fact, Vader didn't know that the Death Star was being created until he went to Scarif, to the base, and he was looking at the plans. And he got caught by one of the admirals. And he wasn't supposed to know about it. It's like, it was a super secret project, and like the Geonosians were creating it, right?
Yep.
So once the Death Star was completed, like those of us that have watched like Clone Wars and stuff know, once the Death Star was completed, the Geonosians were wiped out. Instead of, swearing them to secrecy or, like selecting just a few people to work on it, they're like, nope, we're just going to wipe out an entire race to just hide our planet killing machine.
Except for that one guy in Rebels. Remember that where he has his egg in Rebels?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they didn't do a good job. They didn't glass the planet. What they should have done is use the Death Star
to blow up the planet.
But again, they hadn't been able to rock a test fire at that point, because I believe...
Didn't the first firing happen in the movie?
No, so there was a successful test fire that wasn't a planet-killing test fire, so that's important.
Oh, okay.
They fired on, I believe it was a moon or an asteroid, but like just like proof of concept thing, right?
Yeah,
like Galen Erso was the engineer of the Death Star. And he is the one that finally figured out how to weaponize Kyber, because they've been trying this for years. And they actually blew up a small planet because they didn't do it right. But luckily it was in like the outer rim and like no one knew where it was.
Yeah.
But the big thing was like where was I going? I lost it.
Well, I was gonna say, people would have known about it if the Starlight Beacon would have succeeded.
Oh, dude, don't even bring it up. We'll get there when we talk about the High Republic series.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna be doing the book reviews for sure. I'm reading the second book.
I got number 1 around here, so I don't know where I put it. I don't have it on me. Actually, I think it's in the living room. I was reading it before this.
Yeah. So we have book 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there is a 5th one, and then there's at least one other series that we still have to read that just got another book recently.
It'll be a while till we review the High Republic.
It'll be a while.
So what's
Palpatine was playing this galactic level chess game, and like when you really look into it, the rebels were playing checkers. They really were.
Yeah. I mean, you get into Palpatine being the Chancellor of the Republic the whole time.
Yeah.
It goes into the Sith infiltrating at the end of the High Republic as well. Just just with the Jedi being like, so I don't know what the right word is. I guess self-confident, just not even in the realm of paying attention to the dark side.
Well, it's something that Mace Windu said in was it the second movie, right? Because that's when they learned, it's during the Clone Wars that Obi-Wan was taken captive, and Dooku literally tells him the Senate is under control of a Sith Lord, and you guys are oblivious to it. Yeah. And what does Obi-Wan do? I don't believe you. We would have seen it.
Yeah.
Because
you guys aren't on the level that we are. I just no way you did that.
But the best part about all of it is like the Jedi Temple on Coruscant is levels above the Sith Temple that is on Coruscant. Like, it's under your noses. How do you expect, like, how do you not see it?
Yeah.
Or like, how do all of the Grand Masters of the Jedi Order and the Council, all the times that they meet with Palpatine, never sense this guy's a little off? Or every time they walk into his office, oh, that's a Sith artifact. That's a Sith artifact. These are some red flags, right?
Yeah.
Like, that was one of my favorite things about reading one of the books and reading a couple of the comics and going back into the movie and be like, oh, those are actually Sith relics. Those aren't just pieces of art. That was really cool.
Yeah. It just shows how naive they were both. It happened to them before, right? The Sith were gone. They made a name for themselves. And then it happened again when the Sith actually just took over the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
You think Yoda would have learned? He was there.
Yeah. Well, and like the other part is like, that's part of why the Rule of Two was created, was to control kind of like the spread, right? And like when you have so many the whole Force balance and everything, you have so many Jedi that are all using the light side of the Force. And if there's only 2 people using the dark side to its full potential, they are exponentially stronger than everybody else.
Because you can actually use it to the full potential going off the balance, right? You have so many Jedi, 2 Sith, right? You can use the dark side to its full potential. Mm-hmm. All right, let's give a rating, okay?
Okay.
What would you rate Palpatine's return now with all the knowledge we have?
All right, so out of all the knowledge that we have with his history and his preparations with operations and the strand casting, I would say his return is like an 8.5 out of 10 for me.
Okay.
However, the way it was portrayed, if you only take in the cinematic events, it's a flat 3.
I would probably go lower.
It's literally just, he's back.
Yeah.
Like you literally
I know you
just
saw
feel
him fall
the
into that
energy.
reactor, but he's actually here right now.
Yeah. And again, like that's what Maul did, right? Like he fell down a tube. Oh, he's dead. Cool. Oh no, not actually. He's still good. He used the dark side to stay alive. Yeah. Made himself some new legs. Kind of had a little bit of a mental problem.
just a little bit.
Yeah. What about you? What's your rating?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I should have thought about that before I asked you. um,
All right.
Honestly, yeah, I think
So,
I would.
with everything that we know, what's the rating?
Everything with all the knowledge that we know, I would
Mm-hmm.
I would think I'll give it. I think I'll go around where you are. 8.5, probably maybe a 9. Maybe I don't know. A 9. I can. It gives me more appreciation for Palpatine. I already love the guy because he controlled both sides of the Clone Wars. I'm like, wow, how do you do that? But just with this long plan that was kind of that he stole from his master, right? And it's been there ever since he was taken on as an apprentice, whenever that was. We don't have a year for that, but it's like, I don't know, 70, 80-year long process that he was doing. And he deserves to come back after putting in that much work.
Yeah.
I would have liked to. I don't know how it would have gone, especially. I think of with the cinematic knowledge. I think having him on that life support thing, not being able to do much, was good. I would have, but having as long as he did, I think I would have liked to see him like actually fighting. Up and fighting.
That's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
But they might have thought. They probably did think about that, but it would have done way worse cinematically.
It's probably better that they just had him, hooked up to the machine.
All
but
you
I
can
would
do
have
is-
liked when they had him, like, cool, here he's hooked up to this machine. That's their chance at the flashbacks.
Yeah.
Right. That's
definitely.
when they could have been like, this is what I was doing. This is what the strand casting was doing. This is me building Snoke and whatever. Like, they could have filled it right there. And I honestly think everybody would have been okay with it.
Yeah, definitely. That would have been. That's all they needed. That's all they needed. Heck, people might have been okay with him staying longer if they explained it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially because we're gonna, we're getting the Rey movies.
Yeah.
It's gonna be some aspect of Palpatine still being there.
Definitely. Someone has to. I mean, she's the bloodline. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in a flashback or like a voice in her head in that movie, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would not be surprised.
For
I don't
sure.
think people would like it because this has put such a bad rap on the Palpatine name, but I would. I think I would enjoy.
Yeah. All right. So what are we talking about next week?
What we talk about next week? We're talking about the dark side.
Yes, my favorite.
So we're staying kind of with Palpatine, but not too much. We're kind of going into in the High Republic, how they infiltrated, and the rise of, and then the rise of the Sith, and then the fall of the Sith with Palpatine's death. And we're gonna go into the Rule 2, how that was created, and just both the infiltrations that we've been talking about today in the High Republic and in the prequels. We're gonna go into that. You excited for that one?
Dude, I am beyond excited. I am a big fan of the Sith.
Oh man, I need a Sith movie in my life.
That's my wish. Well, I have two requirements. I want a Sith movie, but I don't want it to be PG-13. I want it to have the chance to be dark and awful, and I don't think Disney will ever do it. But
Disney nor Kathleen Kennedy would do that.
Right? Yeah, right. Like maybe now that we got a new creative director
Under the Disney name, they're not. You kidding me? That's not happening. Maybe we need Rebel Moon Part 2 to bring us that.
Maybe, or I would even take it in a TV show.
Yeah,
just a little bit of something.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's gonna be the end of our topic today. You can find all of our social channels at DS Revelation. We are on Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok. You can find me on Twitter at @TheJonathanJ. Where can we find you?
Twitter and X and Instagram at Darth Pollen.
All right. We're here every Wednesday, and we'll see you next week for talking about the dark side.